What's up? What's up? What's up? This is the Black Guys Like Baseball 2 podcast, episode 1. Uh, fe- Featuring myself, Terrence Nelson, out of Baltimore, Maryland, and my co host.
Brian Evans out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
And we're going to get into a few different topics today. This is episode 1. So we definitely want to talk about why we're doing this podcast. And, black guys do like baseball too.
Fact.
Stereotype that black people don't follow baseball, but we're here to shatter all of that. But this podcast, thoughts on where you think, this thing can go, Brian? What's up?
Man, I think this thing is very necessary. There's a lot of, stereotypes that black guys don't like baseball, and that is not true at all. Especially where I'm from. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
All right, so in this episode, we're going to talk about why we do this podcast, opening day traditions, why it seems so freaking early this year everywhere. Big move with one of the biggest players in the MLB that is, move hasn't really happened, kind of sort of happened, but not really. One legend coming back to the diamond and another legend trying to get back to the diamond. The one person in the world that thought Derek Jeter was not worthy of the Hall of Fame. We'll get into that.
Insane.
And we will do, right, insane. And we'll do a Negro League spotlight on Andrew Rube, the father of black baseball. So strap up. Oh, I shouldn't say strap up. That's not a good transition for a podcast, I don't think. But yeah, this is episode 1, so let's get into it.
I said, take. I said, take. Me out to the ball game. Take. I said, take. Me out with the crowd. Now buy me some peanuts. Buy me some peanuts. Buy me. Take.
Shout out to the legend Bernie Mac for the black Take Me Out to the Ball Game. That's like a throwback. I know some of y'all won't. That went over some of y'all's head, the whole Def Comedy Giant era, but that was some classic material from a legend, Bernie Mac. Now, you remember when he first did that, or am I like super old?
No. I definitely remember that. I think any comedy fan should definitely know that. That is a classic. Rest in peace to the legend, Bernie Mac.
Rest in peace, Bernie Mac. Huge Cubs fan, if I remember correctly, too. But again, it's the Black Guys Like Baseball 2 podcast. And again, why do this podcast? Just from my standpoint, there's like a huge lack of diversity around baseball on every level in regards to players, managers, front offices, people in the media, all that stuff. So I think that's, one of the more important points to do, a podcast like this. And, Brian, just in your experience, where do you see, black people, African Americans in the baseball world?
As far as African Americans, you look at the 70s, 80s. Obviously earlier than that, but 70s, 80s, even 90s, African Americans were pretty dominant in baseball. Oh my goodness, why can't I think of names right now? It's weird.
Willie Mays was Willie Mays.
Willie Mays. Eddie Murray.
Dusty Baker was out there.
Yeah, Dusty Baker.
It was just a lot.
For me, like as far as Cincinnati goes, the Big Red Machine. That was a nice, diverse team, but the brothers definitely carried the team.
Right. And me growing up a Yankees fan, we had Dave Winfield out there.
Yeah.
It was just a lot more representation on the field. And I actually saw this interesting stat the other day that there had only been 5 GMs in the history of Major League Baseball that were black. And I thought that was like hella interesting, being that like baseball is like literally the oldest professional sports league in America.
Right.
Like, and only 5 GMs have ever been black.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. And then you look at the fact that and I read something else that was weird, and this like kind of speaks to the culture. Like once the manager Buck Showalter has said that Ken Griffey Jr. wearing his hat backwards was disrespectful to the game.
I
And I
remember.
was like, damn, was he on Cincinnati when Showalter said that?
I think I don't know. I think he was still in. Was he in Seattle when that happened? I don't know, but I know people did make a big deal of that, and I think to my knowledge, wasn't that the reason why he didn't want his hat backwards on his on the bus for
Yeah,
his
on the bus in the Hall of Fame. I think so.
yeah, which
Which
is
was kind of
it's
which
crazy.
shows how deep that is. Like,
I mean, we praise this man as being the kid. Like we called him the kid because he wore his hat backwards. You know what I mean?
right.
And for somebody to criticize him, especially later in his career, like, oh, he's wearing his hat backwards, that's disrespectful to the game. Like, what are we talking about?
Right. Like ignore all the stats. Like
Right.
ignore the fact he was surefire Hall of Famer.
Right.
Like you want to focus on his hat being backwards, and like that's crazy. And like I said, that speaks to like the culture. Like
Exactly. And he was an ambassador to the game. I mean, people came out to see Ken Griffey, play. He had the prettiest swing in baseball.
and not even that. Like he literally grew up in baseball. Like his pops was still, you know, kind of like a legend in his own right.
Right.
So it's not like he was, just somebody, totally blind to the culture of baseball, and he hadn't been around baseball all his life, and they still like try to dog him out just for wearing his hat backwards. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, they'll find anything.
Yeah, no joke. Anything at all, or create something.
Right. Real quick, funny thing, and this could be just a Cincinnati thing. People may not recognize this, but one of the owners of the Cincinnati Reds, Marge Schott, she was on record calling Barry Bonds like fruity because he wore his earring. Do you remember that at all?
I do. I remember now. Yo, when you said that name, like that
Oh,
took me
she was so racist, man. That's not even a fact. That's not even speculation. That is a fact. She was so racist.
I forgot all about her. Didn't they they basically like stripped her of the team, right?
They pretty much got her out of here. Like when she started making like statements like that on record, like everything was kind of behind the scenes up until that point. But when she started making statements like that, yeah, they kind of got her out of here.
Right, and that's like my other point. Like if these people make those statements in front of the camera, like you can imagine like the way they view, the black baseball players or people involved with baseball, like behind the scenes.
Right.
You know what I mean? I always think about that when they say like ridiculously racist stuff, like on camera, like best be sure they're saying something like 20 times worse.
Oh, absolutely.
In those meetings and stuff like that. So again, I think that's why, and like media is no better. So that's why I think this podcast is important, because I did a little bit of research in regards to the media as well. And like ESPN has like no black commentators for like the baseball broadcast. They got like one radio baseball commentator, which is Chris Singleton, and one black analyst for baseball, which is Doug Glanville. So it's like on every level and aspect of the game, like African Americans are just kind of like shut out or not represented. So I think that's why this podcast is going to be important too, just to give a black voice to baseball fans.
Absolutely.
So we're here. We're going to be here. So if you're black, you're a guy, you're a woman, whatever, whatever you. I'm not going to go there, but
baseball.
Right. The black baseball, this is the conversation. This is a safe space for you. And even now, we only have 2 black managers. One being Dave Roberts out in LA with the Dodgers, and now Dusty Baker getting back into the game with the Astros, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I mean, even representation on that front is kind of crazy at this point.
Yeah, like you said, we'll talk about Dusty Baker Dusty Baker coming up soon. But I think the fact that they gave him one year deal,
Yeah,
making him a lame duck coach that's pretty whack. It's like, yeah, we're just definitely using you to bridge the gap. We're gonna move on.
we'll get into that in a second. But
yeah,
we'll definitely get into that in 1 second, because I had the same thought. But moving ahead, like opening day is coming up. I believe we're 50 days away at this point, or 49 days away at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah,
And this is definitely feeling like one of the earliest opening days in the history of Major League Baseball. A lot of games, I believe, will start on March 26th with all 30 teams playing,
right.
if I'm not mistaken. To me, that kills a lot of tradition. I know here in Baltimore, we used to have an annual fan fest for the Orioles, but they've actually canceled that this year with no particular reason at all, or at least not one given. I think that's, I don't know if this is going to be a trend, if this is an anomaly for this particular year, but I know out there in Cincinnati, you were telling me that opening day is a big deal. So how's this early opening day affecting the Cincinnati fan base?
So yeah, out here in Cincinnati, I think it was 2 years ago. A Sports Illustrated writer wrote an article on how big of a deal opening day is in Cincinnati. Again, with it being one of the oldest professional baseball teams, there's so much like history and tradition. So one of the traditions is that we would have a parade, which starts at a place called Finley Market, which is a old historical market since like the early 1800s, I believe. So the parade starts there. You have former baseball players. A lot of big red machine players will be there. Johnny Bench. It's not baseball weather. You know what I mean?
Mm.
In my opinion, it should definitely be like mid-April. Like, and I don't know if this is going off topic, but I just feel like 162 games is a lot of games. Like, let's
Yeah.
cut the BS. Let's start, late April, mid-April, where majority of the country is warm. I remember, God, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or heck, it could have been last year. Like I was watching the game up in Detroit, and they were playing in the snow.
Yeah, that's because actually, I used to work at Oriole Park in Canada Yards,
Uh huh.
um, and during the season. And one year it literally snowed on opening day, and that was like the worst day of my working life ever.
Yeah,
Because people were like, and like people were still like out there like drinking beers, and they had winter coats and all that stuff. But yeah, that was nuts. So yeah, I feel the pain of whoever experienced that in Detroit.
yeah, it's insane. And like side note, I'm a photographer, so I try to go every year to opening day. And this is
Hmm.
just how big of a deal it is in Cincinnati. Like people actually take off. Like people will either skip work or just take off, and it's kind of like just a known thing. Like if you happen not to be at work on opening day, it's kind of almost forgiven depending on what your work environment is. Now, if you're in a corporate world, that might not fly, but
Right.
other than that, like it's just a big deal. It really is, and so I normally schedule off for every opening day to take pictures of the parade and everything. So I just think down the line, I would love to show my kids, grandkids, how the parades were back then and things like that. I just think it's a nice historical fact. And last year, the Reds celebrated 150 years of baseball, professional baseball. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was a big deal last year. So yeah, like I said, we got lucky. We got lucky, but I don't know what it's going to be like. It seems like these winters are lasting longer and longer, and
Right.
you know, yeah, we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same way here. Like it used to be almost as if, opening day was like an official kind of like Father Sunday. Because
Right,
like you said, like people would take off work, people would, take their kid out of school just to go to opening day. But I don't know how this earlier opening day is going to affect that, or if it's going to affect it at all. But it definitely it feels different.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It feels different being this early. And to your point, I've argued with, some other baseball fans I know that you can easily take a month off the baseball schedule and it would be okay.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like even if they started, in May and went through October, I think the game would be fine,
yeah,
like to be quite honest. And I think it would create, a little bit better of an experience for the fans. And a lot of times, like a lot of players don't even get like going until like May because like that April weather is so like weird and unpredictable.
right,
They don't really get into a groove until like it starts to warm up a little bit. So it might even, improve the quality of the game a little bit. But
right,
yeah, I don't know what this earlier like I said, I don't know if this earlier opening day is going to be a trend or if they just trying it out. I know the one thing that's different is all teams will play on opening day. That hasn't been the case. I know the last couple of years they've had one kind of primetime game that was kind of the day before opening day,
right,
then opening day. I know a couple of years they had like teams play overseas and then have opening day.
Mhm.
So yeah, so this is a little bit different that everybody's going to be represented on opening day. So we'll see how that checks out. And I still might actually call out for work for opening day. I
All right,
hope my
my time, man.
so I hope my supervisor doesn't, watch this or listen to this podcast, at least in these early stages, because I might not be there opening day. But I
Well, well,
digress.
the way it's looking, it's either going to be raining or snowing, one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be rainy here that week, the early forecast say.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We shall see. But speaking of opening day is always, a time where we see new players with new teams, new ballparks, new, situations, new managers. And there was what was supposed to be a big move with the player happening this week that kind of didn't happen or is still pending. And that's the move with Mookie Betts going from Boston to the Dodgers, and what was a 3-team deal, which may be shrunken down to a 2-team deal, but it's kind of like all over the place.
Yeah.
So the Dodgers were set to get David Price and Mookie Betts from the Red Sox for prospects Alex Vertigo, and I do apologize so much if I pronounce these names incorrectly, but yeah, and a pitcher named Brusado Graterol. And the Twins were set to get Kenta Maeda from the Dodgers. But there has been some discrepancy in the injury reporting for Graterol. I believe he had Tommy John surgery last year, and the Red Sox are pretty much saying that the Twins kind of fudged his injury reports or, his tests with their doctors before the trade, and they're trying to pull out a whole bunch of crazy stuff. So even with that, the important part is that Mookie Betts looks like he's heading to the Dodgers and David Price as well. So with that, do you think Mookie Betts gets the Dodgers over the hump to actually win the World Series, or
Like
not that much?
I, I, I do think he'll be a great addition to the team. I don't know what it is about the Dodgers, man. It's like every, it's like the past what 2 3 years, whatever. They get a nice little piece coming into the team, and it's like, oh yeah, that's the piece they needed. Like
Right.
it's over now, and then one way or another, it's like it just does not work out. And I mean, and that's baseball. I mean, you're not going to win every single game. A series can flip easily in baseball. A team just gets hot and everybody sees the ball and hitting the ball. So I don't know. But will he be a great addition? Absolutely. He's going to put more butts in seats this year. So
Right.
overall, it's a good move for the Dodgers.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. I mean, Mookie Betts is one of the best players in the league. So whenever you get one of the best players, like it's impossible for it to be a bad move, barring injury.
Right.
But in terms of the Dodgers, winning, like their problem is their best pitcher folds in the playoffs. Like,
Correct.
like Clayton Kershaw is like lights out, unhittable regular season, but for some reason in the playoffs, dude just like falls apart. Like it's like ridiculous. I mean, obviously I live in the DMV,
Mhm.
so the Nationals series against the Dodgers was everywhere in the top of the conversation.
Right.
But when we gave up those back-to-back home runs to the Nationals, like it was like, who is this dude making 30 something $1 million a year? Like, and this is like a trend with him. It's not like just last year. Like
Right.
historically his numbers in the postseason have been like terrible. So I don't know how much this does in terms of their, aspirations for the World Series, but until they fix that Kershaw playoff problem, I don't think Mookie Betts helps that because he can't go out and pitch. So
Right. I think Kershaw just needs to eat his Snickers because he's not himself in the
right,
playoffs. I don't know what
dude
it
is
is.
literally like the Russell Westbrook of baseball in the playoffs, like triple doubles all season, and then in
Right.
the playoffs like nothing.
Turn the ball over.
Like dribble, dribble, turnover, dribble, dribble, break the fourth quarter.
Right.
That's Clayton Kershaw. And, and the crazy part is the Dodgers don't need help in terms of like bat. Their lineup is like solid from top to bottom. So the fact that you have the best pitcher in baseball regular season that kills you in the playoffs, that's like killing them every year.
Yeah, that is the issue.
So yeah, I mean, I would like to see Mookie in LA. And I know that one of the things is when Magic Johnson brought into the team, he said he was going to make moves to get more black players involved.
Yeah.
And I think hiring Dave Roberts was a part of that too, a part of that kind of transition or initiative that Magic's trying to do. But I don't know if this is it for a World Series run.
Yeah, it'll remain to be seen. Like, I ain't gonna front, I'm kind of mad. There was earlier talks that the Reds were looking at him, because surprisingly the Reds were trying to make moves this year, and I was like, oh, bet, like if we get him, like I'll for sure get some tickets this year. And then obviously that didn't happen. But the short time that we had Yasiel Puig here, like the city was on fire, and like he won. He won everybody's respect in Cincinnati when he took on the whole Pittsburgh Pirates team.
Right, he's trying to fight the whole team.
The whole team by himself.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that, and I looked it up on YouTube too. He was like legit trying to fight everybody.
Yes, for people who don't know what we're talking about, look up Yasiel Puig takes on the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Everybody's tough until you stand in front of Yasiel Puig, and he got the gun. I can't remember if that was a game where they rocked the cutoff sleeves or not, but man, like, yeah, I wouldn't want none of that either.
Right, and that's the irony. Like he was with the Dodgers, and he lit a fire under that team, and they still couldn't get over the hump.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Mookie Betts coming in. Like it'll be a good look, but I'm not sure if it wins in the World Series. And the other thing is, David Price is trash in the playoffs too.
He is.
So you're gonna have two pitchers in your rotation that have historically been, trash in the postseason, but you think Mookie Betts is going to get you over the hump. I don't. I'm not a GM.
Yeah.
I'm not a team owner, but I watch a decent amount of baseball, and I think the Red Sox look at getting rid of Price as kind of like addition by subtraction because he's like done nothing for them consistently. So
right. Yeah.
We'll see how that works out in LA.
Looks like the Dodgers are going to just try to be the former Golden State Warriors and just straight up off. We're going to blow you out offensively and hope that our bullpen can hold up.
So you're saying Mookie Betts is like KD? Is that where you going with that one?
I didn't mean it that way, but yeah, he could be a hired gun.
Yeah, I don't know about that comparison, but like he's a good player, but I just don't think he's that difference maker. Like he looked good last year, but Red Sox as a whole didn't look great.
Right.
And like I said, the only thing that's been hurting the Dodgers got a killer lineup, so I don't see what this move does for them to move them forward. But we'll have another show in the future that we'll talk about like picks and predictions and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, going forward, speaking of the World Series, of course, Astros got caught up in a little bit of trouble, to say the least. They kind of look like the Stringer Bell of Major League Baseball right now, trying to overachieve and not, doing it the right way. But they brought in one of the greatest managers of all time to kind of right the ship in Dusty Baker. And if you listen to this podcast, I'm pretty sure you know who Dusty Baker is. I mean, this dude has managed some teams with average talent and taken them to the playoffs. Don't do well historically in the playoffs, which I don't think is completely his fault, given some of the teams that he's taken to the playoffs. But again, Astros made the move to bring in Dusty Baker to kind of clean up the culture a little bit after the whole cheating scandal, and they cleaned house in the front office and in regards to the managerial staff. So, with the move to Dusty Baker, how do you think the Astros, look this year on and off paper?
On paper, I think, he gets it done. I mean, I don't know like how this takes a hit like on a team like mentally. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna be heckled everywhere they go. I mean, you are now the Patriots of Major League Baseball. Like, you're just a cheater, and you will ever be known as a cheater. That will take a toll. But I do think he does help clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up, whatever's left to be cleaned up. But more than anything, I think Dusty is just a good motivator as far as knowing plays and things like that. Like he knows how to manage the game, but I think he's a good motivator. I think he can communicate well. So overall, I
Mhm.
think it does help. Just to me, being a black baseball fan, I'm like, why did you only give this man 1 year? Trying to clean up, one, your image, two, just like, hey, like, we want you to be here. We want you to be a part of our culture. Not, we're only going to give you one deal and see how it goes.
Right.
Like,
And
this doesn't make
and the thing is, it's 1 year with a club option, like, so it's not even like he don't have much leverage and choice in what happens after that 1 year.
right. You're right. Now, unless it comes out later that Dusty only wanted 1 year for health reasons or whatever, something like that, then okay, fine. But, like other than that, like, no, like give this man at least 3 years with like an option or something like that. Like he has to know that he's going to be there for a while and he has input on what happens with the team. But other than that, you're just temporary. Like, you know, I I don't know. I'm sure he'll be respected by the players, but other than that, I don't know how serious you can take him.
And like I said, like you said, that the 1 year and the option is like a huge smoking gun that they literally bought this dude in just to clean up their image for maybe a year, and then move on from him. So I don't. To your point about the players respecting him, I don't know if they will 100% because they might be looking at him like, dude, you only gonna be here 1 year, so I'm not really like buying into whatever you selling in regards to leadership on the team.
Yeah,
So I think that might actually hurt them, next year. And the fact that everything they do will be under a microscope, is going to kind of hurt him as a manager because every move is going to be second guessed or why did they do this, why did they do that. But at the same time, Dusty's been around. He's a smart dude. I don't think he would walk into a fire trap, so to speak.
right.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how this plays out. And like one of the crazy things that's happening, like people are already against him managing the All Star team next year.
Which is insane. Like, why is that a thing?
Right, like he has something to do with what happened, with them cheating or whatever. Like people are calling him to step away from the All Star game. Like, and I think that's just a taste of what he's going to, face this year, even though it's not his fault.
Right.
Like he wasn't even like there. And again, we keep going back to Cincinnati somehow, but he he managed your Reds for like a good bit of time. Like
Yeah.
from what you saw with him with the Reds, what do you think he's going to bring to that clubhouse?
I mean, I definitely don't blame him for our playoff woes. I mean, like you said, that kind of was his thing. Like he can get a team to like the playoffs, and they kind of don't perform well. But I mean, obviously, being on the other side of the tracks now, like when we haven't made the playoffs in years, and we've been at the bottom of our division, like I would gladly take, a first round, second round exit in the playoffs compared to no playoffs. I think Dusty would be good. Like I loved Dusty when he was here. The culture was good. The pieces that we picked up when he was here. I mean, again, that's when we had like Mike Leake, Cueto, Valquez, like our pitching. Heck, we had the Cuban Missile. I mean, like we were doing great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we had a stacked lineup. Bullpen was good. We had young studs pitching. Like we were great. And then management decided to blow it all up.
Again, like being in DMV, when he was the manager of the Nationals, he kind of like prematurely had success with them in the playoffs. Like they won the NL East like twice
Yeah,
when he was with the Nationals, and they still fired him. So I mean, he's gotten, in my opinion, as a black manager, he's gotten a raw deal with a couple of different teams he's been with.
yeah,
So the optics of hiring him to clean up this Astro situation, you know, is very transparent, like what's going on.
yeah,
But again, at the same time, like I said, he's been around, so I don't think he would walk into a situation knowing he's like set up to fail.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure he has some tricks up his sleeves, or at least, like you said, he's not walking in blindly. Like there shouldn't be too many things that surprise him.
Shout out to Dusty Baker. I mean, whole world's gonna be watching,
Hey, good
so
luck, Dusty.
we'll see. Yo, crazy! Like this is wild, crazy story. So like, this had to be about I would say about 6 or 7 years ago. Like he was managing. I forget who he was managing at the time, but they were actually in town to play the Orioles, and like me and my boys were at the club, and like Dusty Baker was like in the
Hmm.
club, and I was like, "Why the hell is Dusty Baker in a nightclub in Baltimore?" Like, like it, and I guess it was chill because not too many people are going to recognize like Dusty Baker, like especially like in
Right,
Baltimore.
right.
But like, he was legit like posted up at the bar, chilling, having a drink in the club one night, and I was like, "Yo, that's Dusty Baker," and nobody knew what the hell I was talking about. But that was like so insane to me, and I'll never forget that as like a baseball fan. But
Yeah, yeah. And I guess this kind of goes to the stereotype. So like, what club was I? I was at some club out here in Cincinnati, and it was a Cuban Missile. He was like in the back. It wasn't really like a VIP area, but it was just a back in the back of a club that was kind of ducked off or whatever. And like nobody knew he was even in there. And it was a mainly predominantly black club or whatever. So again, not a lot of black baseball fans, I guess. Um, but nobody knew who he was. He was just tall. You know what I mean? Like that's how he stood out. But sure
right,
enough, when the club let out and they see this Ferrari sitting in the no, I'm sorry,
right.
Lamborghini sitting outside, everybody's like, "Whose car is that?" And then he walks to it, gets in, and drives off, and everybody's like, "Who was that?"
Like that's what made people
That's
notice.
how many
Like
people notice, right? So
that's crazy.
yeah,
And to a bigger point, like, and this is way off base. Like, I'm really surprised, like, the love and hip hop type of chicks haven't gotten to baseball players yet,
right,
being like they make the most out of any professional athletes.
yeah. It's funny because, like, I listen like the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne, and Charlemagne is always saying that. He's like, "Boy, y'all lucky I'm a man," and he's like, "I'd be a thought if I was a female." He said, "Everybody know baseball players got the best contracts." That
Right,
is a
but
fact,
I don't, for whatever reason, like the women don't be on baseball players for some reason, even though they like making like twice as much as NBA
right?
players.
Guaranteed money, better contracts,
Most of them are from like the islands, so like going home would be vacation to most chicks out there.
right,
But
right.
I digress. I'm not snitching. I'm not sending the love and hip hop chicks out
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the
no,
ballpark.
yeah. I don't want none of my Reds players caught up this year, so yeah, we're trying to make a run this year,
I don't get nobody jammed up.
right?
But moving from Dusty Baker, making his way back to the diamond. Another damn, we keep going back to Cincinnati. But another Reds legend is actually trying to use, the Astros scandal to get back into baseball. And that's the all-time hit leader in Pete Rose.
Yes.
So with that, you think Pete Rose has a shot of being reinstated at some point, being that what he's done hasn't been the worst thing that happened to Major League Baseball. I mean, you obviously got the Astros and the whole PED era of baseball. You got like the Black Sox scandal way back in the day. All this stuff. Like Pete Rose is literally not the worst person in the history of baseball by
Yeah,
like a mile.
I
So you think they're gonna reinstate him at some point in some capacity?
sadly I think not. Now, I'm biased. I'm a Reds fan. I think he absolutely deserves to get in. I mean, just look at the man's stats, and I mean, he's an icon. The Hit
Right.
King is his name. I mean, Charlie Hustle. Like, there's so many aliases he goes by. I think it'd be one of those things where he probably won't get in while he's alive because they don't want to give him those flowers while he can still smell them. He'll probably die, and then like 5 years later, they'll be like, "Hey, you know what?
Put him in.
We have a change of heart. Pete Rose absolutely deserves to get in the Hall of Fame, and we're gonna honor his wishes."
Right.
um,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like, I don't see how you keep like with so much he's accomplished. I don't see how you keep him out. He's not the worst person in the history of baseball by far.
Agreed.
So I don't think keeping him out really does anything for the game of baseball. So I don't know what the commissioner, how he views what happens. I can understand the commissioner at the time not wanting to, induct him into the Hall of Fame because a lot of that stuff happened on, his particular
Right.
watch. But I mean, going forward, like you said, they'll probably wait till he dies. They'll probably like Negro League him and wait till he dies to put him in the Hall of
Yeah.
Fame. And I don't think it's deserved. I don't think it's warranted. Especially like they literally haven't, to my knowledge, and you probably know a lot more than the situation I do. I don't know if they've actually provided proof that he was like betting on his team or against his team at any point.
I think they found like the papers. I think, and don't quote me. I'm not 100% sure myself, but and again, I don't know if this is me being biased or as a Reds fan or just like a sports fan, but like you said, like everything that he accomplished, like you can't tell me that. Well, you betting on baseball, which is the unforgivable sin in their eyes. Like you betting on baseball, like you said, there's been a lot worse. And the fact that people are betting on sports, period, let alone baseball, is just like, come on, this is 2020 at this point. Like we need to let this man in. What he did, he paid for his mistakes. Like
Right.
let's make it right at this point. I really do think you're doing baseball a disservice by not having him in. His jersey, his bus definitely deserves to be in there. I mean, it's Charlie Hustle.
Right. And the other thing, like the hypocrisy of it is like the major sports leagues now, they like feed information to like the gambling houses, like to set lines and stuff. Like they announce who the umpires are going to be before the games.
Yeah.
They provide weather, like they provide like the casinos and the sports books with information to help shape lines, and they give information to like FanDuel and DraftKings and all the other like supposedly fantasy platforms that is really gambling at the end of the day. They like proactively provide information to these outlets and platforms, but they still want to keep this guy from gambling, which is like nuts to me.
Yeah, I think it's just time to come off the moral soapbox for baseball. It's like, come on, it's time.
Right.
It's time.
And speaking of the Hall of Fame, of course, the major news, probably maybe like one of the biggest stories, if it wasn't for the Astros, was Derek Jeter not being a unanimous, inductee to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, let's just go over some of Derek Jeter's like accomplishments. Like, and these are just some.
Yeah.
Like 5 World Series rings, 14-time All-Star, 5 Gold Gloves. He's 6 all-time in hits, 200 postseason hits, which is number 1 all time, 3,000 total hits. And that's just some of his accomplishments.
Right.
And some writer somewhere just decided not to vote for him for the Hall of Fame.
Right. Hate.
Now, that's got hate like written like all over it. And that's like crazy, insane. It makes no sense. And the irony of that is that for years, people made an argument against closers even getting into the Hall of Fame, but Mario Rivera is the only unanimous inductee to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Who was Derek Jeter's teammate during those 5 World Series championships.
Right.
I don't even know what we do that. And the other thing is that the person who decided not to vote for Jeter chose to remain anonymous.
Coward.
Like, right. You can't throw a stone and hide your hand.
Right.
Like, I don't know. What were your thoughts on, how that unfolded, how that news came out?
I don't want to say I was shocked because there was talks about like, I don't know. I just kind of figured, half of me I was like, well, if Mariano Rivera got in unanimously, Jeter should definitely be a part of that. Because like I said, they were teammates. Jeter was like the face of the franchise.
It's a baseball for a long time.
Yeah, and baseball, period. Yeah, I mean, he was called the captain. Like that was just his name, like the captain. So some of me was like, well, yeah, he'll definitely be unanimous. And I was like, well, maybe not, like because there's always that one person. Like, and I said that too. I was like, it would probably be like just one person that'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna screw this up just for the hell of it. Like, and yeah, that's what happened. Now I'm gonna be a little messy and say, obviously, we don't know who this person is. Let's not forget some of Derek Jeter's accomplishment off the field. Because that is part of his legend as well. That's part of his legend as well. Now, this man was notorious for dating some of the most beautiful women in the world, let alone New York City. And he was known for his...
He actually dated Miss Universe at one point. Laura Dutta, I think her name was.
Okay.
I got a whole list of his dating
Yeah,
accomplishments
I
too.
mean, and then they are accomplishments. Like this man is a legend. Now, keep in mind, like nothing ever came back bad about Jeter. Like you never heard anything negative off the field. Like the man was a stand up citizen, but he was
Right.
known for dating the most prettiest women, and treated them right, and giving them gift baskets, take homes, if you will. You know what I mean? I think this sports
Right.
writer was very jealous and envious of that, and who knows, maybe his girl might have been one of those women that got the gift baskets.
No, well, I don't know about that because if you've seen the sports writers that vote on the Hall of Fame, none of those dudes are bagging anything on this
Could
list.
have been their niece.
But yeah, and that's the thing. Like you make a valid point though. Like to do what he did off the field in New
New
York
York.
and nothing ever got messy. Like that's like an accomplishment
Absolutely.
within itself.
Not a stain on them.
Right, not like an accusation, not a nothing. Like I think that's an accomplishment within itself. And like just going back to the voting thing, I actually thought that Mariano getting in unanimously was the setup for Jeter to get in
Right,
unanimously.
you would think.
I thought they gave him that so when it was Jeter's time, it would be a less controversial, less of a thing to be brought up, honestly, because I mean, like, what argument could you possibly make against Derek Jeter? Like, some people have said that he may be, a little bit overrated because, he played in New York and all that type of stuff. But I mean, this dude performed like talk about playoffs. Like we talked about Kershaw in the playoffs. Like Jeter was like the polar opposite. Like he could do no wrong, in the playoffs in crunch time. So like for anybody to vote against this dude getting the Hall of Fame is just crazy to me.
And,
Like I don't get it at
and
all.
one of the things that just stick with me was like his last game. The most memorable moment for me was, which is like one of those I know people made memes out of it, and not a negative thing, but people made memes and like gifs off of that. But the little kid raising the hat to set respect, like
Yeah,
that was a
yeah,
Derek Jeter moment. Like that's an infant. I can't even say it. Infant. It's infamous, basically. You know what
right.
I mean? Like that's iconic. Like that's Derek Jeter. Like that's what he did for baseball. Like, and for a writer to be like, nah, he's not gonna get my vote for to make this thing solid. Yeah, I need to know why. I need answer, Sway.
I don't think we ever going to get answer to that. Like it's crazy to me. And I can actually honestly say the same thing about Ken Griffey Jr. Why he didn't get unanimous vote.
Yeah,
He was in the same vein as Jeter. I mean, he doesn't have the championships, obviously,
right.
but I mean, find a flaw in his career or in his game that doesn't put him in that unanimous category.
Yeah, I mean, you know, especially during like, and I think the difference is, even though Jeter was around during the steroid era, Griffey was obviously in it during that era, and like there was never really any. I'm sure certain people may have made speculations, but Griffey never got big. He never came back during the off season 30 pounds heavier, solid muscle. You know what I mean? Like he always
Right.
played well. His numbers never jumped off the chart like one season compared to the next. Like he was pretty consistent, always around the 50, 60 home runs, played his butt off, still made plays. I mean, his biggest thing was like, certain people would say that he never just stayed healthy. Like he always pulled like hamstrings and things like that. I mean, I'm not going to knock the man's workout regimen. Like I don't know what he did or didn't do, but that was the only
Right.
negative thing. People would be like, yeah, he just never took care of his body. Which even if that is the case, I'm not going to fault him. That's like that could be his Achilles in his game.
Right. And and the thing with Griffey, even with the injuries, he got hurt making plays though. Like
Correct.
he got hurt like jumping against walls and trying to get the extra base
Yeah.
and all that type of stuff.
Right.
So even if you try to hold injuries against Griffey, like dude, he was out there playing.
Right.
That's how he got hurt. He wasn't like one of those dudes out there washing his car and broke his hand somehow. Like
Right.
like dude was like actually making plays. But I don't know if this like should be like a rate like an opportunity for the Hall of Fame to re-examine how they do, their votes and everything though. Like
Yeah.
because this is clearly somebody dropping a ball.
Yeah. I think after this, we definitely need to look into it. I mean, if nothing else, the fans should demand that we look at another way of voting.
There's a lot of those, for the sanctity of the game type of dudes that vote on a whole bunch of things in baseball, like Hall of Fame, MVPs, all that type of stuff.
Right.
That I just think their way of thinking is a little outdated, and it's not really helping the game at all.
Right.
Like Jeter being a unanimous in the Hall of Fame would have been like, I mean, it's big news that he got in. It didn't hurt him getting in, but like if he was unanimous, it would like take it to another level. But yeah, like these for the sanctity of the game and what's good for the game type of guys, like they need to kind of like get out the way at this point.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame. Say what you want to say about the PED era of baseball, but like legit, like baseball was on its last leg until Sosa, McGuire, and Barnes started like doing whatever they were doing.
Yeah, it definitely
Like,
brought the attention back to baseball. I mean, remember even the commercial, chicks dig the long ball.
right,
Like that's what we wanted to see. We wanted to see somebody hit a home run 400 feet out the stadium. We wanted to see the splash balls from Barry Bonds. At that point, I'm like, let everybody be on steroids, and I want to see my pitchers. I want to see my pitchers throwing the ball 105 miles per hour. I want to see my home run hitters hitting the ball 500 feet. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just make it an even playing field and put everybody on steroids if that's what's going to make the game better.
Right. And that's the other thing, like with the PEDs, like pitchers and hitters will own them. So
Right.
if you got a pitcher that's on PEDs and a batter that's on PEDs, I mean, like that's an even matchup to me.
It is. And that was my point for the whole Barry Bonds thing. Like, even if this man was on steroids, his hand-eye coordination was still off the charts.
Yeah,
I don't care if he was on steroids or not. Like, what he accomplished, I mean, what was it, his last, 2 seasons or whatever, how many times they had to walk him because they was like, nah, there's no way I'm going to let this guy even get a piece of the ball because he could still hit it out the park. Like, that to me just says a lot. So, again, I'm not saying he was or wasn't. Like, I don't care. Like, that man can hit the ball.
Right.
He put fear in
so, right. So, I mean, like, I don't know if this is a watershed moment for Hall of Fame voting. Some people are saying it's not that serious, and it might not be because, I mean, ultimately he got in with 99% of the votes, 99.7 or whatever it was to be exact. But I think it is kind of a watershed moment to kind of examine or re-examine how Hall of Fame voting and MVP voting and all that stuff goes in baseball. So, Great thing is, they reserved a spot for his plaque to go next to Mariano Rivera's in the Hall of Fame, which is pretty dope.
That is.
Actually, I never been to the Hall of Fame. I actually want to get up there at some point.
Well, it's crazy that, I live in Ohio and I still have not been myself. I have not been to that, and I have not been to the NFL Hall of Fame. So, yeah, I need to get together.
Well, you never been to Canton?
I have not.
Dude, you live right there. Legit. Like that would be like a day trip for you.
Yeah, easy.
Maybe we'll get to the level where we can do a live podcast at Hall of Fame weekend or something.
That'd be dope.
Yeah, MLB holla at us. Like we won't be offended at how much money you offer us
at all. The podcast your way.
Right. So yeah, we have goals for this podcast. I'll share later, but that would be dope if we actually got up to the Hall of Fame to be a part of that.
That would be.
And speaking of the Hall of Fame, that leads us to our Negro League legend of the game, Mr. Andrew Rube Foster, born on September 17, 1879 in Calvert, Texas, was known as the father of black baseball. Considered one of the best black pitchers in baseball during the early 1900s, Foster started his career with the Waco Yellow Jackets, an independent black team, in 1897. During his career, Foster would pitch for not only the Yellow Jackets, but the Chicago Union Giants, which he co-founded, Barton's Otsego Independents, and the Cuban X-Giants. In 1903, Foster led the X-Giants to the Eastern Black Championship against the Philadelphia Giants. The X-Giants won the series 5-2, with Foster winning 4 games of the series. In Foster's first stint as manager in 1907, he led the Chicago Leland Giants to 110 wins, including 48 straight, on the way to winning the Chicago City League pennant. Not long after that, in 1910, Foster would become the owner of the Leland Giants. Foster's biggest impact on the game would come in 1920 when he organized a meeting with 6 other Midwestern black club owners at a YMCA in Kansas City, Missouri, to form a professional black baseball circuit known as the Negro National League, with Foster serving as the president. Under Foster, the NNL was the first Negro League to achieve financial stability and last more than one season. Foster would pass away on December 9th, 1930, in Kankakee, Illinois, at the age of 51. He would later be elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee in 1981. That's the wrap up. This is our first episode. Like I said, opening day is about 49 days away. So we're counting down. I think pitchers and catchers are what, next week? 2 weeks?
Yeah, I know. Speaking for my team, the Reds, I know they left Cincinnati to head to the training camp. So spring training. So yeah, it's I believe it is like this week or next week.
All right. So 2020 baseball is right around the corner. So we'll be here. We'll give you a pod every week about what's going on, highlights, big moments, talk around the game, all that types of stuff. Anything you want to throw in there before we sign off?
No, I think we're good. I think this was a good podcast, first podcast, and it'll only get better.
Absolutely. All right. So thanks for checking us out. We will be on all of the podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, all that good stuff. So subscribe, like, leave comments. We will see you again next week.
Peace.